Ready to go?
Yeah, it's just loading right now. Okay.
Nice.
Welcome everybody to another issue of Money Talks. My name is Hugh Meyer. Really excited to be here. We are live with my guest, Anthony Pomp. Super excited to have you with us.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, man.
Just want to remind everybody that Money Talks was established to connect small business owners with expert entrepreneurs and thought leaders and discuss how they are thinking during these really disruptive times. So Pomp, thank you again for being here. Really excited to have you. Can you tell everyone a little bit about your background, please?
For sure. Grew up in North Carolina, played football at Bucknell University, was in the military for a while, did a deployment overseas, came back, built and sold 2 small software companies, living on the East Coast, then went and ran some product and growth teams at both Facebook and Snapchat, and then started investing full-time in 2016, and I've been doing that for the last 4, almost 5 years now.
That's great. And you've been a huge help to me as far as launching, I guess call it my foray into social media. You started this from the ground up, I think about 2 years ago, and you've done an amazing job of really communicating your value proposition and what was the impetus for all that? And how do you, and can you just tell our viewers how you build all this?
Yeah, definitely didn't have a master plan. I think, one of the things that helped is just I'm relatively digitally native in the sense of I'm 32 years old. When I was in high school, we started to get cell phones and stuff. So wasn't quite like kids today where, kids are getting cell phones in kind of elementary school, but definitely earlier than most people. And I also had the benefit of having worked at multiple social media companies. And so just understood kind of what those platforms provided, how they work, things like that. In 2017, started on Twitter, eventually built a pretty large email offering, then went and started a podcast, and also added YouTube. It's kind of 4 major platforms. And really the secret to it all was just consistency. So going all the way back to 2017, tweeting every single day for years, in terms of the email every single day, since May of 2018, right? So more than 2 years now, the podcast, more than 2 years. And so I think that what people forget is just like, there's a bunch of tips and tricks and, tactics and techniques that can make you better, or help you grow a little bit faster. But ultimately it just comes down to the quality of the content and the persistence, right? Will you do this day in and day out for years? And that's really the secret.
Thank you for that. I mean, you've been a huge resource to me. And that's why I created this, why my partners and I created this podcast, is that we thought we needed to connect small business owners to resources like yourself, entrepreneurs who are having to do this every day and figure out, how do we manage through this super difficult environment? So again, I thank you for that. You really gave me guidance on how to kind of launch all this. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's the first step is just getting started, right? And I think you've done a great job of that. So you're off to the races now. It's just keep doing it every day for a couple of years, and then we'll see what happens.
Yeah, yeah. I'll try to remember that. You gave me some great advice about a month ago as far as how to really compartmentalize all this and focus on one specific area and kind of go at it like that.
Yeah, look, I think that one of the key pieces to all of this is the more you can focus, the more that you will be successful on that specific platform, right? So in terms of trying to grow one platform first, build up that audience, then use that to grow a second one. It kind of becomes easier every time, right? So it took me an entire year to go from, a couple thousand followers on Twitter to over 100,000. On YouTube earlier this year, it took me 7 months. Right. And so why is that? Well, because I had the email and I had Twitter and I had the podcast and I kind of have all these different tools now to kind of accelerate that. Right. The next platform that I move to, whatever that ends up being, hopefully will be even faster than that. And so you kind of learn very quickly. It's really about focusing, building an audience, and leveraging that to bring it to other platforms.
Thank you again for that. That was great. How do you? I mean, you manage the podcast, the newsletter. You're on Twitter. You're a partner at Morgan Creek. How do you find the time to manage all of this? That's what really fascinates me.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's all about efficiency, right? In the sense of we all get the same amount of time, hours in a day. I actually sleep 8 hours every night, so I've got about 16 hours. And so, how do you spend those 16 hours awake? Uh, I waste plenty of time, frankly. I think I'm not very good at the time management, but I'm also willing to just have a higher capacity for work. And what I mean by that is, there's days where I will work 12, 14 hours in some cases. Now it's not straight, kind of that's all I'm doing. But it is kind of a very constant, persistent amount of work. And really it's because I enjoy it. Like, I don't think that this is, kind of something I wake up in the morning and I dread doing, because if that was the case, I would just stop. And so it's just about enjoying what I'm doing, and then doing a lot of it. Right. And there's some people who really focus on, like, how do I make the absolute highest quality thing I possibly can and do it once a month or once a week. Right. I choose to go the other direction and say, look, there's a huge benefit to me of having, the podcast conversations every single day. And so I record as many podcasts as I possibly can. And, some people like that, some people don't. It's all kind of what your personal preference is. But I really don't, I joke with friends at least and say, like, I'm not the smartest guy, right? I'm not the most talented guy, but I probably do outwork a lot of people. And you see that with just kind of the content output and kind of all the other things that I do. And so the goal is, how do you kind of continue to leverage that year in, year out, and not get burnt out, not get tired, and all that kind of stuff. And it's by enjoying the work. And so far, so good on that front.
Absolutely. You have some amazing guests on your podcast. You reach from one end of the spectrum to the other as far as your guests, whether they're in sports or in business or in the digital asset world. How do you manage that part of it as far as reaching out to new guests?
Yeah, there's a lot less science behind it than people think. A lot of times I'm just playing around on Twitter. I see, hey, that's somebody that I want to talk to more, and I just DM them and say, hey, would you love to come on the podcast? Yeah, there's some people who will reach out to me and say, I've got a suggestion. Usually those are lower quality. So I really try to make it serendipitous in terms of there's specific topics I want to talk about. So I'll go find somebody who's an expert in that field, or there's people who I just find interesting, usually through Twitter, and then I'll just ask them to come on. And so, so far what we've seen is most people are willing to not only, one, come on, but two, be gracious with their time and spend, quite a bit of time kind of having those conversations. I learn a lot from it, but then the benefit to them is, I've built this big audience that then I can kind of put them in front of, and that distribution or notoriety ends up being pretty valuable for them.
Yeah, no question. I mean, I tune in as much as possible, and you learn, you're, like I said, you're an amazing resource and the message is so clear. And you really connect with your viewers, and that's clear by, your viewership has grown exponentially over the last 2 years. And I think, again, that's attributed to you really communicating that clear message, but also what's super important is that value proposition that you offer to everybody on a daily basis.
Look, it's that's the whole key to this game, right? Is if people find the content valuable, then they'll share it, they'll come back, they'll kind of keep going. And I'm sure not everything is valuable to everybody, but something's working because people keep coming back.
Yeah, I mean, it's, every day, I know I learn a lot from just reading the newsletter on a daily basis because, while your background, is very specific in technology, and you're obviously writing quite a bit about digital assets, you also touch on a lot of other important subjects that affect all of us, affect small business owners. What kind of, I guess, sparks that the range of topics on a day-to-day basis?
I wish I had a plan, man. I know some people, they write the night before, the day before. Every once in a while, maybe once a month, I'll like feel really accomplished because I wrote something the night before and I don't have to wake up early and do it. But for the most part, I just wake up, I read through the news, I kind of get a sense of what people are talking about, and maybe some thoughts that I have. And what I found is I write because it's a way for me to organize my thoughts, and it forces me to go learn things, to kind of construct arguments or points of view. And then it also keeps a record, right? In terms of, I look back, I was looking the other day, I wrote something in March that was all about the liquidity
Right.
crisis and how it was likely that, assets would eventually kind of stabilize if the government stepped in, and, all this stuff that in hindsight was pretty accurate. But I was reading it yesterday and I was like, I can't even believe I'm the one who wrote this. Right. Like those thoughts seem so foreign and so long ago, even though it was only 6 months ago. But it's like that record. Obviously, that day I was thinking a lot about the liquidity crisis and potential ways it could play out. I'm like, it's almost like this diary to some degree. And so now I can look back and say, okay, well, on that day, good job. I was thinking the right things. Go read something 2 days later, like, maybe wasn't thinking the right thing, right? And so you can kind of go back and read and see how your thought process evolves as you got new information, and just all of that type of stuff is very valuable. So every piece of content I create in some selfish way, like I try to make sure it's valuable for me. And then it's like, look, I'm going to put this out in the world. And if you or anybody else finds it valuable, great. But if you don't, like, it's still valuable to me. And so it's worth my time.
Absolutely. And yeah, keep up the great work. I mean, I know I learn every day, in some way, shape, or form from just reading one piece of your newsletter or something you tweet out. It makes me think, and then I can be a better resource to my own clients. So I appreciate that, and I'm sure your subscribers appreciate it as well.
Yeah. Well, no, I appreciate that very much. I'm having fun.
Yeah, no question. Um, Kind of switching gears a little bit, obviously a lot has taken place over the last 6 months since COVID started. Just in kind of the venture capital and the technology world, what have you seen that's kind of gone on and changed in the last 6 months from kind of where you sit?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? So I think that if you told people, hey, there's going to be this global pandemic and the government's going to lock everyone in their houses, there would be some general assumptions made. So asset prices would sell off, stock market would be, tanked. A lot of people would lose their jobs, housing prices would fall, all the, kind of the things that just naturally people thought at the beginning of March. Instead, what we've seen is stock prices have exploded. Residential homes continue to rise just because of the cheap capital that's flooding the market. Savings rate is up. Personal income rate is up. You see a lot of deals being done in the kind of early stage venture capital space, especially in kind of like the really efficient software technology space. You're seeing those companies outperforming the public markets. And so in hindsight, it's like, oh, look, this is so clear. Like companies that are built for the digital age are doing well, and companies that are built for the analog world are not doing well. Well, like, yeah, that makes sense, but I don't think it's kind of been actually applied in the way that you would have thought before
Right.
all of this played out. And so when you then kind of dig deeper into venture, we know that in times of great uncertainty and chaos, a lot of great businesses get built. And so I do think that there's this element of, it feels like now is a horrible time to start a company, but history tells us now is the best time to start a company. And so I personally have just been looking out for, what companies are being built, how are they being built, when, what sectors are they focused on, and all those kinds of things. Because if you look back at 08, 09, I mean, kind of generally in that time frame, we got Uber, we got Twitter,
Right.
we got Lyft, right? I mean, we got Airbnb. I mean, just a ton of these companies came out of that time frame, and so the thought process would be there's probably going to be a lot more now, right? And so how do we just go find those companies and gain equity exposure to them?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I mean, one of the things I do on these podcasts is the consistent message I get from a lot of my guests and entrepreneurs is it's very positive because we are unfortunately subjected to a lot of negative press, a lot of negative news, and to the point where it's really discouraging to if you're a small business owner because you think you can't get access to credit. The world is quote unquote coming to an end because that's what the media is saying. So, but they're not getting, these anecdotes from you or from Jason Williams or from Mark Yusko or from anybody who's on discussing about advancements in technology and healthcare that are going on right now. Like people are changing the way they do business right now and changing it for the better.
Absolutely. Look, it's generally the idea of innovation is a place where there's not only great returns, but there's great progress, right? And that's kind of the nature of innovation. And venture capital is focused on finding those innovative type solutions, right? And so we'll kind of see how that plays out. But history again suggests that that is a place that people should focus. Should exposure in their portfolio to venture capital, and it's just a matter of can you actually get the right deal flow and the right access to the best deals, right? It's like something like if you take out the top, I don't know, 50 best managers in venture capital, then you lose money in the asset class, right? But if you've got the best and you're investing alongside them, then you end up actually being in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I know you discussed this a little bit earlier. You're doing all this work in social media. How do you find the time or to having to focus on these kind of investments? Because obviously that's your, I call it your day job is, you're managing investments with Morgan Creek. How are you able to really focus on that solely?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So, look, they're very kind of self-reinforcing. And what I mean by that is there are a lot of investments that I found by interviewing people. Let's say I'm interviewing a founder and they're telling me about their company. Like, wow, this is really interesting. Get off the recording and hey, tell me more about this. How does it work? Okay, that's great, right? And end up doing that. On the same side, we will see quite a bit of people who will come and say, hey, I want you on my cap table because you can help promote me through all the channels that you have. Right. So it's kind of this self-reinforcing thing. And there's no recipe. There's no, hey, I spend 30% of my time doing this, 40% of my time doing this. I just look at it as this is what I enjoy doing. And so I keep doing the things that I enjoy. And so far that's proven to be quite effective.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, no question. I'm sure our viewers can appreciate that. What kind of, I guess, thoughts or advice would you have right now for small business owners? You actually, I think you did a podcast of your own on the last couple of days, kind of discussing this. Maybe can you talk a little bit about what you went through on that podcast?
Yeah, again, it just goes back to most small business owners are optimized for an analog world. They've got physical locations. They don't have a lot of software. They don't think in terms of kind of the efficiencies and kind of structural advantages of using technology or the digital world. And the kind of headline takeaway is just you got to get ready for the digital world because it's no longer, oh, we're going to transition there in the next 5 or 10 years. Like it's here now. And so if you're a restaurant, you don't have curbside pickup or mobile ordering, or you're not integrated with food delivery apps, like you're going to suffer, right? We saw that during the pandemic. And what I think the pandemic really did was it kind of threw people into the future and it
Right.
forced them to understand like, whoa, this is what my business operating my business in a fully digital world would look like. As we came out of kind of the core, depths of the pandemic, they then got to kind of go back a little bit to normal. Right. So maybe they're not fully back to normal, but they almost got like a crash course in this is a digital world. Okay, now you're back in the analog world, but don't lose sight of that digital world because like that's where we're headed. And
Right.
so what people need to do is like go build your business for that world you saw in March, April, and into May. And then you will thrive in the analog world and be ready for the digital world. And so I think that's the main thing. Each business or each vertical of small business is different what that means from an application standpoint. But I think that's really the main takeaway is just like it's not a digital world that's coming. It's here, right? So
Right.
like get ready for it today, so that you don't end up being back in that same position where, all of a sudden you can't bring customers into your location and you're, basically running out of money.
Yeah, I mean that's the one thing that's very consistent with with your newsletters, with the podcasts. There's some element of that, and I think it's super helpful to myself, small business owners is, this is like you said, the environment is here. You got to figure out how to, I guess, absorb it and use it and leverage it, to kind of push forward and get ahead, get ahead of the game as kind of we go into this new age.
Yeah, and look, I think also part of this is it's a mindset, right? So there's like, what do I actually do? But first, you got to change your mindset.
Right.
And what you start to think is like one of the examples I used was for a restaurant. So the things I just described, everyone's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Okay, curbside delivery, got it. Okay, how do I do mobile ordering? Okay, got it. Now how do I integrate with delivery apps? Got it. Okay, those three things, bam, done, easy. What do I do next? Well, a mindset change would be, wait a second, I have IP. What are the things I do inside my restaurant under my brand that I can then productize to go sell online? Maybe I make, amazing chocolate chip cookies and people in the community would love to just buy those rather than have to come in, right? Can I somehow productize those? Maybe it's some sort of, I'm a small business that does some sort of hardware and I actually make these really cool signs. And right now, only people who walk in the store can buy them. But if I can somehow get that online, now I can sell this physical product to anyone in the United States, right? I could drive a new revenue line. Like those are the things that I think people really have to spend the time to understand specific to your business. What is it that you do that you can, one, optimize today for the digital world, right? So you don't change anything, you're just improving it. But then also, how do you expand kind of horizontally by adding other revenue streams without changing the core of your business? And so that idea of like using the IP at a restaurant to then create products that you can go place in the grocery stores or sell online or put into other local restaurants, like that is one step. There's a whole bunch of other things like that, but it's a mindset change that has to happen first. Once people change their mindset, then they can change their actions.
That's great advice. On that thought, how do you think that, all the issues that have happened globally, with supply chains, with China, how does that interplay here? Do you see that kind of changing? I mean, it is changing. I mean, how does someone kind of manage through all that, at least from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, look, with the supply chains and manufacturing and stuff, like there was definitely this pursuit of kind of efficiency instead of resilience, right? Chamath Palihapitiya came on the podcast and really kind of highlighted this. And in that pursuit for efficiency over resilience, we basically exposed ourselves to being dependent on other countries, being dependent on other suppliers, all this kind of stuff. I think what we're going to see now is maybe not a full over rotation back to 100% resilience and no worry about efficiency, but probably some more of an equilibrium. So people are going to want some level of resilience while also maintaining some level of efficiency. Now that should bring back some manufacturing, that should bring back some supply chain stuff. Ultimately, U.S. labor is very high from a cost perspective, and so I think what we're going to end up seeing is a pursuit of technologies that allow people to kind of reshore or onshore those
Right.
manufacturing and supply chains, use technology to keep costs low, and then basically help any sort of labor that normally would have taken those jobs, get them retrained and get them into kind of more production focused, less tedious type responsibilities and jobs. Now, that all sounds great, super easy to say. That's like a decade plus type trend that is going to take a lot of effort on a lot of different people's fronts. It's not just the businesses that are bringing their operations back. It's also on people to build the technology so that through robotics and 3D manufacturing and kind of all of those things, they're available, right? So you actually can keep your cost low enough where you have resilience and efficiency. It's then somebody's going to have to build companies to retrain that entire workforce so they can go do other jobs. There's going to be people who have to create those other companies so that there are jobs available for the retrained employees. Like you just get this chain reaction all the way down, and you just say, look, the world is transitioning, right? And change is constant, right? The world is always changing. How do you figure out what's best for you, and where do you want to play in that transition, right? Do you want to be somebody who's making the picks and shovels and
Right.
providing all of the 3D manufacturing parts so that as more people have 3D manufacturing facilities in the United States, you're making money? Maybe you want to be the person who owns the factory. Maybe you're the person who wants to own the, supply chain or the logistics or whatever. It's just, there's so much opportunity. I actually think one of the biggest challenges for entrepreneurs is optimizing and prioritizing where to go actually go after opportunity, right? Because that's the hard part, I think.
Right. Yeah, no, that was great. I thank you for that. Um, just kind of in conclusion, what are maybe one or two other thoughts as far as advice for small business owners going forward? You've obviously given a lot of detail in that vein, but anything in conclusion today? I appreciate it.
Yeah, I would say that there's three things. So the first thing is like surround yourself with people who have the digital skills that you think you don't have, right? Many people actually have the skill, like more of skills than they would admit to themselves. But I think that's the first key step is just surround yourself with people who have the digital skill set that you believe you don't have. They will teach you things and show you how to do things more efficiently, faster, to a larger audience, etc. The second thing that I would say is surround yourself with a group of like-minded business owners. I think that there's a lot of small business owners in America who feel like they're on an island a little bit, right? They don't know, they don't have anyone else to talk to, right? And maybe they talk to their spouse or they talk to an employee or they talk to, their best friend when they're drinking a beer or whatever it is, but they just don't have kind of somebody who's in the trenches doing the same thing as them.
Right.
And so be intentional about going and building out that network. And even if it's just, hey, I jump on this phone with this person once a month, that's good enough, right?
Right.
There's no need for it to be a daily or a weekly thing. It can just be monthly or even quarterly, but just have somebody that's a sounding board. And then the third thing I think is really sitting down and removing yourself from the day-to-day operations and planning and saying, what do I want to build? Right. I think a lot of people, my father runs a small business. And if you asked him what's his biggest challenge, like it's probably that, right? Which is you just get caught up in the day to day, right? Oh, there's a customer here. I got to service the customer, right? Oh, I need to go make sure that delivery got here, right? Or, oh, there's a leak I need to go fix, or, whatever the day-to-day activities and operations are, people can get very much in the weeds, but plan it, put it on your calendar, one Friday every month or a Saturday or whatever, time out. Take a step back. I'm not going to do anything on the day-to-day operations today. And I'm going to look at all of our metrics. Where are we? Are we trending in the right direction? What do I want to build? And what do I need to change for us to get closer to what that intended goal is? It sounds stupid, but like planning helps, right? And so I think that's ultimately what we need people to do, or they can benefit from doing. It's just a matter of being intentional about scheduling that time. So it's surround yourself with people with digital skills, surround yourself with like-minded, kind of peers, and then make sure that you're being intentional about getting out of the day-to-day operations and really thinking like a business owner, not like a kind of operator of a business.
That was wow. Thank you for that. I mean, that was really great. Super informative. The last topic about the planning, I think it's hugely important, especially if you're going to do like what you've been doing, which is you're running your business, but you've built out the social media platform, which is fed and help, give you ideas into your business. And the only way you could do that is with what you're talking about, the planning. You have to have a plan. It has to be on your calendar, write it down and make it happen and execute that plan.
Absolutely. I think that is that's the whole key. So it's again easy to talk about, hard to execute, but the people who are intentional and spend the time, they end up winning. So it's just you got to have a plan and understand the plan is going to change. That's fine, but you only move the things that you measure, and so I think that's a big focus for people, or should be.
Great. Pomp, thank you again for your time. I know you're super busy. You've been, like I said at the beginning, tremendous resource to me. I'm really grateful that you could spend the time here with us and our viewers today. And hopefully we can find some time down the road to bring you back on again. Thank you again for your time.
Absolutely happy to do it. Thank you so much for doing this. Doing a great job, and I'll definitely do it again in the future.
Thank you, everybody. Again, please subscribe to the Money Talks YouTube channel. Smash that like button. We'll be back with another episode next week. Thank you again. Remember, Money Talks. Take care. Bye-bye.